Good afternoon. On Tuesday, February 14, 2023, our amended committee of the whole meeting. I would like to say thank you all for giving up your Valentine's Day to spend this night with us. Hopefully, we will let you out pretty early. I will now call to order. We will do invocation and pledge. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to do invocation? Okay. All stand, please.
Let's pray. Father, we just thank you so much for this night, and Lord, an opportunity to be here to conduct the business of the school district. Lord, I pray that you would be with us. Lord, give us wisdom and discernment tonight. Lord, help us that we would move forward and, God, do what's best for our district, Lord, and all of our stakeholders. Lord, I pray that you would bless our teachers, our admin, and our students. God, help them each and every day that they would strive for excellence, Lord, and do all that they can to achieve greatness. Father, I pray that you would be with us tonight and bless us in all that we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I would like to entertain a motion to approve minutes. Committee of the whole meeting, January 10th, 2023, regular board meeting.
Because we can't take action.
Not tonight. Okay. I'm sorry. That's right. It just said 21. Okay, we're going to go with public input. And we have one public input. And I just ask you to restrain not calling employee. We know the policy. So, Riddell, would you take minutes for me? Okay. Mr. Wheeler?
Good evening,
Good evening.
Dr. Cave, School Board. I'm here tonight to present something to you that I have been...
Speaking to the mic,
Oh, okay,
please.
I can get a little closer.
Okay.
Present something to you that I have been noticing the last few weeks at school, at the high school. For those of you who don't know, I teach at Thunderbolt Career and Technology Center. Give you a little idea of what's going on, what we've been seeing as teachers, administrators at the school district, at least at the high school anyway. I can't speak for any other place. Every morning we are there to help facilitate getting the students in the building, security checks, uniform checks. In that execution of that duty that you guys have assigned to us, one of the things that we've been seeing is students having meltdowns at administrators. Just 2 weeks ago, I watched a student speak to Mr. Cannon in a way that I absolutely found deplorable. Deplorable. The language that was used, me as a retired sailor, I can tell you, I don't think I've ever addressed anybody like that in my life. The way this student spoke to Mr. Cannon was completely inappropriate, but I've seen that happen to colleagues. I've had it happen to myself. Just because we are addressing items that you have asked us to address. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing that I have been seeing good. Our Cougar Nation situation that we're bringing in extra people into our building, Dr. Cave, School Board, I will tell you is working. We are getting people in there that are helping us. We don't have enough. This community needs to come together. Our kids deserve that. I would ask all of you, come up at 8 o'clock in the morning to 8:45. Watch what we go through every day. I tell you, if you come a week, you're going to see it happen. And you're going to be upset about it too. I'm upset because I don't want to see a colleague go through that. I don't want to see Mr. Cannon talk through that way under any circumstances. It's not appropriate. It's not professional. Just because we ask a student to, you're wearing shorts that aren't appropriate today. Your book bag is not in line. And then they have a meltdown at an administrator. I spoke to Mr. Cannon before I came up here. I spoke to Mr. Cubic before I came up here, and I spoke to Dr. Cave about this. These are not actions any of you,
30 seconds.
yes ma'am, any of you would expect out of our student body at the high school. So I'm asking you, come up with our Cougar Nation people. Let's get more of them out. Show us your support by helping us get more of those people out. Put those people in place so that we can take and help our students succeed in the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that our RFP is for action that will be taken next meeting, but I just wanted to just brief to say that we are or have been interviewing for an attorney for our district, and we are in that process right now, so we will discuss a little bit more on our next board meeting. We will now discuss discipline work session, part 2.
Madam Chair, if I may, first of all, let me apologize on my part if there was any confusion about this being on the agenda. I just wanted to make sure that we were able to discuss it. I think the first work session that we had, was very productive. I have gotten a lot of great feedback from that, so I want us to go ahead and make sure that we continue and go ahead and get our next session lined up. Dr. Cave, I have not had a chance to present to you, but I just wonder if February the 28th, that is a Tuesday?
I was looking, yes, thank you, Board Member Irwin. I was looking at the 28th, or if we couldn't do the 28th, then March 7th is open as well. I believe that would be the next one. I was just looking for the next available date.
Sure.
February 28th or either March 7th.
And I don't-
Either
Mr.
one is fine with me.
Thank you, Dr. Cave. Mr. Burt, can we decide that tonight? That's not technically action, is it?
No, you're just asking for dates. The board, I don't think, I caught the emails today real quickly. I would agree that I don't think the board at this point needs to take action every time because you're doing a continuation of these meetings. And I think that you and Dr. Cave are free, as far as I'm concerned, free to schedule them and notify everybody
Okay.
for dates that work.
Well,
Yes.
I apologize for that. So thank you for that correction. Yes, sir, Mr. Murdock.
The 28th, I'll be out of town.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just one now.
Sure. Does the 28th work for other board members?
Works for me.
Do we have to decide tonight, or can we kind of like confirm it on our next meeting?
Well, I think Mr. Burt just said we didn't.
Yeah, because
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure. I need to check just to make sure, the 28th, but I will do my best. Will we look at the same time? I will do my best to be there. Right now, I can't confirm it.
Sure. And I think Dr. Cave said the 28th, and if that wouldn't work, perhaps Tuesday, March the 7th. So board members, if we can just look at those two dates, and maybe at the next meeting, we can come to a consensus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, will we still use the same time? Pardon? We'll still keep the 2-hour frame. I think we did 6 to
8.
6 to 8.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think that would work.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That will work perfectly, as long as we stick to it, right? We did well the last time. Now we will discuss some new business, which is 6.02, a new part-time board secretary. But that is that is discussion. 6.01, I'm sorry, you guys. All these dates are just throwing me off. Request by a board member for district cell phone.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
I've come before you to make a request on behalf of of Board Member Lynn Strobel. She approached myself, and I also thank Ms. Riddell about a cell phone, and I wanted to bring it before you to make sure I asked questions of all of you to see whether or not you wanted cell phones as well, so that we could determine where we needed to get the budget item from and talk with our CFO about it. So I want to offer you some pricing. $49.46 per month times 7 phones, if everybody, all 7 of you get it. That's $346.22 per month. And that $346.22 per month times 12 months would be $4,154.64. That's for your consideration. We would just need to know who wants a cell phone and who doesn't.
I don't.
It's totally fine with me. I just needed to know your preference, and we can make the order.
Dr. Cave, as we make that, as we consider the cell phone usage, board members are also offered a laptop.
Yes, ma'am.
At what expense is that to the board?
For the laptops?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if the laptops are any expense. We purchased the laptops. Yes, ma'am.
So the question becomes, the business of the board has an expense or doesn't. I think that it is, our other staff members have the ability to conduct business via cell phone. And so they're given that as a need. And I think if the board needs it as well, there's obvious expense to using the laptops. It's a district-owned piece of property that we're loaned, just like this cell phone would not be under our possession, it would be under the possession of the district. And so I just in considering that, I don't want it to look like an added expense versus something that we already have. The board does conduct business amongst each other as well as with the community, and I feel like that communication is important, and I don't want to sway or dissuade board members from doing one thing or another because of the expense that's being presented.
Totally understood. The only difference is that there's not a monthly charge with the laptops, and there's a monthly charge with the cell phone. That's the only difference.
Understand.
Point well taken.
And I feel that that would be another bill that is added, which we are trying to control our budget. I don't feel that we conduct that much business on our cell phones. I mean, I've been on the board going on 6 years, and I have used my cell phone, and it hadn't been an extra expense to me. So I just feel that if we're in the process of trying to budget our spending, I don't feel that we should add another expense. That's my opinion.
I don't think it's an additional expense. I think it's something to maybe consider at the point of a budget creation. If it's an additional expense, maybe for the next budget year. I do want to speak to the legalities of conducting business on our personal cell phones. And as a school board association member, we're constantly being taught and instructed to not conduct business on our personal phones. And I know as staff, they also are working to use their professional issued cell phone for their business. So board members should also do the same.
Dr. Cave, do we currently have staff that has district cell phones?
We do. We currently have staff that has district cell phone. I have a district cell phone, and all of the principals have a district cell phone as well.
Is that it? So we're talking like 8 or 9, or are there more than
I think the
that?
assistant superintendents have district cell phones. I have to go through, and my directors have district cell phones. Some of them elected to have them, and some of them didn't, because some people just don't want to carry 2.
Would it be fair, Dr. Cave, to just ask for an estimate of how many we have in the district right now?
I'd have to ask the CFO because she handles that piece.
Sure.
How many do we have?
Just an estimate.
Estimate has to be about 28.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So I can print a copy of this for you. I just wanted to bring it to your attention so that I could know what to do. I don't have a problem with it. I just need to be able to find out what you want to be able to do. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
So since we're through with that, we're going to now go to the part-time board secretary. This was brought to my attention due to the secretary, her workload that she has on a daily. And when she is requested to make copies continuously doing a last-minute board meeting, it interrupts her daily activities. And I think, Mr. Irvin, you had mentioned before, if I'm not mistaken, when you first came on, was it necessary that we have our own board secretary? You had asked that question once. I'm putting it out here for discussion. I would just like to have each of your opinion.
We have a policy on who serves as to the board, or how that works?
I'm not, I'd have to look at that, but this was just added, and I've been busy today, so I hadn't had a chance to look at policy on it. One thing that we have to be careful when we talk about this proposed position as part-time secretary, just so there's no confusion, we have a corporate secretary, which was different than this. What you're really talking about is a part-time administrative assistant. So we just need to be careful that we're not talking about the corporate secretary for the board, although I guess the part-time secretary can perform some of those the drafting of the agenda, the drafting of the minutes, but does not serve in that official capacity. So it's an employed position as an administrative assistant.
And the secretary of the board is the superintendent.
Right, the corporate secretary of the board is always the superintendent ex officio. So that's why I say we need to make sure that what we're talking about here, and everybody understands, we're not talking about the corporate secretary of the board by board policy. You're talking about a part-time administrative assistant that would perform secretarial administrative functions for the board directly.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I want to be careful how I say this, but I think maybe this is a topic that we should discuss in executive session, just because we're talking about an employee and their job responsibilities and stuff. I don't think we need to discuss that in public view. It's just my opinion.
Just for clarification, there are two policies that we probably need to review when we talk about it in private, and that would be policy BD and policy PDF.
So what was the second one?
PDF.
Thank you.
What's that last one? You're saying P as in
Personnel.
PDF, I'm sorry.
PDF.
Yes, sir.
Don't have
Papa Delta Foxtrot.
Foxtrot, yes.
Is that correct?
No, let me get it right.
Yeah, we don't go to P, so that's tripping me up.
ARBD-R. Organization of the board.
Okay.
And the first one was BD. So this
I
was
gotcha.
BD-R. Two.
So I use my phonetic alphabet for nothing, sorry.
The military alphabet, yes, sir.
So we can further discuss this. Attorney, the legal process with this would,
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I was being asked a question.
what would be the legal process? We would put it on hold for our next meeting?
If the executive session request would be proper if we're talking about specific personnel, so Mr. Irwin's request would be proper, you can add it to the agenda for next Tuesday as an executive session item. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, we will go to policy item just for discussion. Policy DBJ, budget transfer, and policy GCLE/GCLE-R, unencumbered time. So, 7.1, do you have any discussion, please?
Can
Which one?
I'm looking, Mr. Duffy. Policy DBJ. We have before us the revised 19, so it doesn't have any changes.
Yeah, I'd noticed in the packet that I just received that what I have is the current policy without the red proposed changes that were addressed last week. So that might be some type of mistake. I can tell you what those are on this policy. This policy currently states that the board authorizes the superintendent to make budget transfers within function and sub-function areas under the budget. There's in one of the proposed additions would be that the superintendent would report those transfers on a monthly basis to the board. That comes in line with a number of other districts that have that model language. The additional language that's in the policy is a language that states periodically during the fiscal year, the superintendent and administration would review the budget, and if there were any adjustments that needed to be made in light of the activity that had occurred year-to-date in the budget, that the superintendent and administration would present a proposed amended budget to the board for consideration. And the policy stated that would occur no less than one time, at least one time mid-year, like January, on a January adjustment based on what had been conducted activity-wise year-to-date. So that language, we discussed it at the policy committee meeting, and I had it in draft. I'm not sure, I might have sent Rita the wrong. I did, my bad, I'm sorry. I sent her the original I had instead of the revised. So I can get that to her tomorrow and get that to y'all immediately, but basically that's the two components that are additions to what's currently there.
I'm sorry, go
A
ahead.
question I had, just because the last sentence says we don't have carryover funds and general funds from one fiscal year to the next, and I wondered where we put the leftover funds from one year to the next.
Right, that's not for me, that's existing language, so.
One goes to our fund balance and it's reallocated the next year.
I just want to point out to our board that it made Miss Ramona smile because she said it would make parts of her job easier. So I just want that to be known to the board.
Well, it's Valentine. It's time to smile.
That's right.
Just a question about, should we specify the specific date that budget amendments are to be revisited, or is that based on a case-by-case basis? What works best? Is it better to set a designated date, for instance, January 30th, that
Yeah,
if there were amendments?
The proposed language has the January meeting as a definite
Okay.
for an amended, consideration of an amended budget, but then would allow, and Ramona has talked with me that sometimes she does have some extraordinary change issues that come about, but it would allow them to make adjustments at any other time, but the January meeting would be the mid-year, and that would be automatic by the budget, by the proposed language, I'm sorry. One of the things that she and I are working on, she's been very patient with me. We've been on the telephone. She's trying to explain accounting and finance to an attorney, so it's all new to me too. But there is some question in here when we start talking about function and sub-function areas. She did explain that to me and showed me that. There's also been some discussion about what language that's classified as major categories. The proposed language that I added is part of the model language that many other districts have. They use the phrase changes in major categories. She asked me what that meant, and of course I thought she would know what that meant. So we actually may be working on defining some of those terms. So we may have an additional language amendment to it to clarify what those terms mean in line with the way our budget's currently set up. She was emailing me budget stuff as late as today, so we're working on it.
So that will be available for our next meeting?
I hope.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In some form for first reading, it'll be ready to go, and then we can tweak it from there.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any conversation with 7.02?
Madam Chairman, I just want to say, evidently, there were some people watching our policy committee meeting because I had lots of teachers reach out to me who are very excited about this new state mandate for 30 minutes of unencumbered time starting next year. So I'm very pleased that our district is doing our due diligence to trying to get ahead of this and get it done as quickly as we can.
And I just want to say thanks to Dr. Cave for working with the principals and everyone and getting this done in a timely manner. Come on.
And I'm not sure if Dr. Cave wants to mention this or not, but board, this is a state, is mandate the right word? Ms.
Correct.
Burt? This is a state mandate, so it's something we have to do, and we have a time frame in
Correct.
which we have to implement it. And Dr. Cave is going to roll this out at 2 schools. Was that right, Dr. Cave?
Thank you, Board Member Irwin. That has changed.
Okay.
We are going to roll it out at all because, they get a little jealous. So now they all want to pilot it. So we're going to attempt to roll it out at all. And that's fair because everybody needs to see whether or not it can work.
This does not take effect until next school year.
Right, doesn't
Correct.
take effect until
Correct.
next school
But
year.
Dr. Cave is trying to get ahead of it and work out some of the kinks on this. So.
Right. So if you would allow me, I do want to bring a few items to your attention. Attorney Duffy and I have not had the opportunity to go over it. We will get some time, hopefully, to be able to go over it in detail and talk a little bit about it. Our HR director had her meeting with the personnel directors around the state, so she had some information to bring back. I met with superintendents, had information to bring back, and then the State Department released the regulation as well as the policy. And then we went over it with staff as well as principals. So we do have to make some changes to the policy or some suggested recommendations. We need to include a statement about early dismissal to make sure we take care of that aspect. We also need to make a statement about itinerant teachers, those that are moving about across the district. And we also need to make sure that we clarify that teachers remain on campus during the time that they are unencumbered. They cannot leave the campus because we're still held liable for them while they're in there. So we do have to make some changes there. So we'll be working on those additions. We are working as a staff to see how we're going to make this possible. We've met with the principals and we've met as an executive team to see how to make this possible. To use the staff that's not encumbered during that time to work that out. Some of the principals are going to extend their schedules for 30 minutes so that the children in elementary school have a longer lunch period so that we can use some staff. We've thought about offering the opportunity to some of our bus drivers who want to take the option to come in and maybe be cafeteria monitors or we're calling it maybe unencumbered monitors to be able to help out. So we're just trying to figure out how we're going to be able to make it happen, but it's a part of the law and we will make it happen. But I wanted to bring that to your attention, okay?
Dr. Cave, I do have just one question. I know you mentioned about the bus drivers. Bus drivers are paid at a different rate to drive the bus than, say, our teaching assistants in the classrooms, right?
And I'm going to lean on my HR and
Sure.
finance people.
So my question is, if we bring them in to do extra duties such as this, will they be paid at their higher bus driver rate, or will they be paid at a modified that lines up more with a TA? Have we thought about that?
We have.
Oh,
We have.
are y'all twins? What's going on here?
Spend a lot of time together. You want me to answer it? You good?
Been in budget session, so we have really been talking about this.
When we pay our employees, we have to do a weighted time average, and that's how we pay them, not based on a weighted time average. We have to calculate.
And so if we use bus drivers, we have several that do not meet their hours within the day that they're allotted. So we would look at those employees first.
But does that make sense that, I mean, because we pay the hourly rate we pay our bus drivers is significantly more than what we would pay like an hourly rate for a TA, right?
I can't confirm that without looking at our pay schedule.
Okay.
Because it varies.
Okay,
It varies, so.
okay.
Any more questions? Now is the time to ask any of that, because we'll be working through it the next few months, because we need to, we have 3 months to get it, first reading, second reading to the state. I have to have it there in March.
That was my question. Thank
Yes,
you.
yeah, they gave us a timeline,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
So we will just give you guys time to work on it, and then we'll
Right.
have questions later.
yes,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Where are we now? Dr. Cave, would you like to come back up and do your report?
BEDA.
Huh?
I
Well,
don't think anybody
it-
has any questions, but you probably just
Well,
need to check.
we just have action on that for the 21st. We didn't have a discussion on it. Did you guys need to discuss?
I
it?
don't know.
Okay. It's a second reading, so it's not.
My turn. Okay, superintendent's update. So as always, I just try to tell you a little bit about what my activities are. I have a clicker. Or you gonna click for me? You gonna be the clicker? All right. So since our last board meeting, of course, I've held executive cabinet meeting for planning, support, and organization. It's a wonderful team that we work with on a daily basis. We've done progress monitoring meetings for Colleton County High School, TCTC, and Hendersonville. That's where I meet with the leadership team there, and we go over their data, we go over their non-negotiables to see how they're implementing their school improvement practices and day-to-day and practices in the building. I've had the superintendent student senate meeting. I had the opportunity to attend the Salkehatchie Consortium Superintendent's meeting to find out how things are going in the other school districts and see what we can draw from other districts. We've been doing a lot of budget prep planning from week to week with every school. So those have been interesting to go over capital projects and the various needs and to see where their budget needs are so far in this year and as we prepare for next year. Attended the USC new presidential visit to the Walterboro campus. We've had lots of professional development with our principals on a rigor of instruction. We've had the board work session. You heard Mr. Irwin say that went well. We'll be continuing that momentum. The superintendent's roundtable in Columbia with the superintendents from around the state, where we had the opportunity to engage for the first time with our state superintendent, Ellen Weaver, and her staff, and that's where we got a shout out for Colleton County on Operation Cougar Nation and the work that we're doing here. Did the Operation Cougar Nation kickoff interview, and then I had the honor of being the speaker for the DHEC Low Country Leadership Group, and then I attended some of our athletic events. I'm happy to say that we are expanding our work-based learning opportunities. It's always great when our TCT students have the opportunity to go into the community or either work within our school to show off their skills and their talents and to be able to further their career paths and to get that credit so that they're able to walk across the high school graduation stage. So beginning, we started this already in Blackstreet Early Childhood Center. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday, we have our students who will be at the Early Childhood Center there. We also have at the Veterans Victory House, we have our health and science clinical studies that will be working there, provided by Nurse Mundell and Nurses DeLong. We'll also have our Culinary Management 2 classes that will be working there at Colleton Middle School. I think that's great. They'll be working there in the cafeteria. And then we'll also have our veterinary science classes that will be working at the Colleton County Animal Shelter. So we're excited for our students to be working in the community as well as working in our school district. We're looking forward to expanding that opportunity even more. And Mr. Kubik and his staff, they're doing a fine job with getting our students that work-based learning opportunity. So the next thing is the modified calendar. You asked us to be able to come back and listen to what the community asked for. Look at all of the suggestions and recommendations that were in the survey, and we did just that. Now, as you see, it says modified calendar on the top. I provided the reason that it has to have modified calendar. The state dictates that, not us. If we start before the third Monday in August, we have to denote on the top of our calendar modified. If we were year-round, we would have to put year-round modified calendar. So we're going modified calendar because we're starting before the third Monday in August, okay? So I put the data here, not the data, I put the information that comes from the State Department. Districts that opt to implement a year-round modified calendar must label that submitted school calendar as such. And I can actually print that off from the State Department memo if you'd like to have that. The year-round modified calendar, this memorandum is also in response to the questions raised with respect to the year-round modified calendar. And it also quotes the law that that's pursuant to as well. Any questions there? I want to give you some specifics. I just included in the presentation again, just as documentation for you, the pros and the cons, to let you know that we took into consideration all of those things as we were planning the calendar there. We also had to make sure that we were following all the recommendations that came out in the state memorandum. We had to have certain things denoted on our calendar, so I can draw your attention to our calendar. I think everybody has a copy. Do you? Okay, so we'll start school with our staff on July 31st will be our first professional learning day. We'll have a week of professional learning. Students will come on August 7th. We will end school on May 29th. That'll be the last day for teachers, teacher work day. Students, last day of school will be on the 28th. That will be an early dismissal. We'll have the break there for Memorial Day, but we'll come back one day and we'll have to break their early dismissal. We scheduled it that way so we would not have graduation on the Memorial holiday. History has it that that's not a good idea to have graduation on the Memorial holiday. Okay, so we took all of those things into consideration and tried to make sure that we accommodated all of that. Athletics is biting at the bit. They are ready for this calendar so that they can get busy planning practices and everything. So do you have any questions? We had to denote some other things on the calendar. I'll draw your attention to the legend here where it says teacher work day, no students. We had to include this time the 3 required PD days, and we have those listed there as well. The early dismissal days had to be included, as well as denoting parent conferences. So some things had to be denoted by law that we had to make sure that we put on the calendar. Any questions, Ms. Ellen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything I needed to I left out?
The 20th, right before Christmas,
Yes.
is highlighted as the last day of grading period because
Yes.
it's before Christmas break. But it is not an early dismissal day. We were only allowed, with the memorandum, we were only allowed to schedule 3 early dismissal days, which are the 9th of October, the 14th of March, I believe.
15th.
and
15th.
15th, and then the last day of.
May 29th.
Right.
28th, yes. So those are the 3 that we had to list as early dismissal days.
And I can justify that from our superintendent's meeting across the state. They're trying to cut out all of those early dismissal days to concentrate more in instruction.
Dr. Caven,
And
thank you.
the parents don't like early dismissal days as much anyway.
Dr. Caven, thank you for the work that you and your team did to go back
Yes.
to look at the survey comments. And coming from the high school, middle school perspective, I like how you thought about the breaks for teaching and learning at the grading periods for teachers and students. There's smooth breaks there at first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. And I really like that the end of course exams, can be planned before Christmas break because, that's a long lapse in time for memory. my question was, are we within the state testing, and you did a good job looking at everything
We
with the
are.
state, are we within the state testing window?
We are. We're fine.
Thank you.
Long as Ms. McDonald's shaking her head, yep, we're good. She looked at it probably already, yes. Ms.
Dr. Cave.
Ms. Williams is on the team, so.
I just have a question, and I readily admit that I am older, right? And when I was in school,
You're
things.
older? No.
Things were different when I was in school, Dr. Cave. Why do we have the October break? What is the reason for those 4 days off for students?
Well, because looking at the survey, we had a significant number of parents who wanted the fall break. And we tried the fall break this year, and everybody said they came back refreshed. They really needed that opportunity just to break. Right.
Fair
So
enough.
we put it in because we had lots of comments that were there.
Have we pushed this out to our staff, this draft, or no?
No.
Okay. I just wonder, I'm just curious, will they like the fall break more, or would they like not starting in July more? I just wonder.
I don't know. They had the opportunity. We took all of the comments in.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to speak to the October break, because I understand that has been overwhelming, and showing what the survey demonstrates as well, that the fall break, 52 were in favor of the fall break. I personally am not. Here's my concern, that as we move forward to the modified year-round calendar, that was originally what the board had asked, what we were working towards, is that would be a 2-week time frame in the fall where there would be, vigor and continuation of learning for students, especially those that need it, right? So that there's a continuation of learning. Having a break in this year's calendar, and then if we were to move to the modified year-round, my concern is the assumption that students were breaking. Two, the feedback I get from teachers is their appreciation for that break. I, however, heard very few teachers say they wanted to work that break. They want the break, they don't want to work during October. It's just the feedback I'm hearing. So if we give them this break this year, I think it would be a difficult challenge to go back to, if we consider the modified year-round and try to continuously learn throughout a year-round calendar.
Understood, but remember, they don't work all 2 weeks that they're off. They have the option.
Right.
They can work 1 week, nobody's here, and 1 week, they have the option.
Understood.
So that could be a trade-off.
Got it. And in looking too, I feel that the December, January winter break seems long. It is longer than years past. If I add the days of teacher work days, we're almost out a full 3 weeks. And that looks like a long break. I would prefer teachers starting in August and reducing that winter break to be closer to the 2-week time frame that we've had in the past. And I'd also like to consider, Dr. Cave, the half-day. I know that there are fewer half-days, but traditionally our district has given a half-day for Rice Festival.
Well, we just didn't schedule it. We have planned that. Our plan is to come and ask you for that day without putting it on the calendar, because you remember, we can only do 3. So instead of changing that, we were going to come ask a special request.
Okay.
And that's
And
normal.
have that day off, yes. So we're going to do that. We're just not going to put it on the calendar.
Okay.
Right. And I totally understand. I welcome those recommendations. We were just trying to take in everybody. We wanted us to look at the Greenville calendar. We were trying to we're trying to accommodate everybody's request by trying to do this. Any other comments?
Yes, the Christmas break is we have 2 teacher work days, and that was a request from several staff members that said the 1 teacher work day and coming back so early caused them a lot of problems, and with exams and final end of course exams ending on the 20th, that gives those 2 work days coming back, gives them time to go over those exams and grade them and get all those grades in final before that 10th coming back. And we don't go out on till Christmas break, so it's only one day different from this year by one teacher workday added.
I see the days, I don't exactly understand, but I appreciate the extension of those teacher workdays, and I know our staff will too.
Dr. Cave, I have one last question.
Yes, sir.
Will we, should we, could we ask for staff input before we take action on this next week?
Mr. Irwin, we've already asked for staff input with the survey. I think that I would not recommend asking for any more input. I think we've done the survey.
And I think they're ready for this calendar to come
Yes.
out.
We really need to get planning. We're holding up athletics. As much as possible, we really need to get moving. Right.
The one thing about athletics in spring break is trying to confirm, I'm unsure, I know Dorchester 2 just approved their calendar for
They
next
did.
year. And we don't have any schools in our region from Dorchester 2. However,
Right.
Charleston is the biggest one that would have influence, and do we know,
They've already approved their calendar.
and is our spring break then the same?
We coincided our spring break along theirs.
Thank you.
Right. I'm almost positive. I just need to double check. I think we did. Yes.
Any more questions for her? Dr. Cave?
And we have many that are in Beaufort, I think. We play
Right,
Beaufort
yeah,
and Charleston
Charleston.
schools.
And there's no way to coordinate with Beaufort because they are heritage.
I have someone checking Charleston's.
Thank you. And I know
And we
Beaufort
don't
is
play all of
impossible.
us, we don't play all of the schools in Charleston. Two, we play two, right.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions about the calendar? Okay. All right. Let's keep going. And if anyone wants to read the State Department memo, I have no problem with sharing that with you as well. Okay. So the next point of discussion is our facility plan. You have seen that. I didn't print it off again. I only put the first slide in your packet. By board member request, you asked us to get several things, well, two things mainly. You asked us to get a cost estimate for how much it would be to continue the process. And you also asked us to work on a staffing allocation, and that staffing allocation is embedded within the HR presentation. Okay, so you had access to that, and we can discuss that at a later time, or we can discuss it now. We did just that. We have a cost estimate, which we entertained with LS3P. That's our architectural firm that we approved in September. Mr. Blakeney and Ms. Fitch will take over from here and talk about our engagement with them, and I will offer any other comments as we move forward. So let me, as they come forward, let's talk about what the facility study entails. So I'll just bring that back to your attention. Our facility study talks about our move to take care of all of the schools within the district. So it involves Blackstreet Early Childhood Center and changing that into the alternative school for elementary on one side and secondary on the other side. Currently, our alternative school is located here at the district office. It has 4 classroom spaces. 3 of those classrooms, there's one classroom for the middle school, 1 classroom for the elementary, 1 classroom for the cafeteria, and 1 classroom that they use for like a computer area. And then there is another area that they use for conversations and small group. We can only house about 40 students at a time in that building. We heard at our discipline meeting that there are about 80 students at the high school who need to transition. We heard at our meeting at the middle school, there are students who need to transition. So quite naturally, that space is not enough to be able to accommodate all of the students. And then we need to also accommodate our elementary children. I deal with elementary children, Mr. McNeely and Ms. McDonald all the time. of trying to figure out what we need to do for our elementary children to have an opportunity to have some restorative practices and redirection. Our plan also encompasses what can we do to help the middle school in terms of providing a more appropriate setting for our sixth graders so that they can begin to transition to middle school and get acclimated to what the middle school environment is without throwing them into a large environment before they're quite ready. And that plan involves taking our elementary children and letting them stay at their current elementary school. So the outlying schools, Cottageville, Hendersonville, and Bells, would remain pre-K through 6. Would change to pre-K through 6 because each one of those locations has a pre-K class or 2, so they would be pre-K through 6. And it would then have our middle school to be 7th and 8th. Why? Because we would take the other 6th grade children who are zoned for Forest Hills or North Side. We would then change the configuration of those 2 schools. Forest Hills would then change to a 3-6 schools, and then North Side would change to I'm doing it all from memory, North Side would then change to a pre-K through 2 school, meaning that we would close the early childhood center and move to what NAEYC, and that's the National Association for the Education of the Young Child, what they deem is more appropriate for an early childhood center would be pre-K through 2. And we would move all of those children there, as well as the children from Forest Hills. And the 3 through 5 children from North Side would then transition over to Forest Hills. The plan also includes, as we move on down the road, hopefully we could build a new TCTC on the site of the high school at some point. Did I leave anything out? All right. So it's your show.
Good evening. Good evening. I just want to walk you through the process that we went through with the architectural firm. What we did is we sat down and met with them as a group and talked about what you all asked us to do is to come up with a conceptual price and an estimated cost. So the cost that you see before you is reflective of a conceptual ideas. So after we met as a group, I met with the architects over at Colleton County Middle School to start looking at some different ideas that we can come up with on how to incorporate the 6th graders and 7th graders in that building. Okay? What happens next, if you all decide that we want to move forward, is they will go ahead and start the cost and the cost estimate and give that to us for what's going on. Then you can tell us whether we need to move forward. If we move forward, they will start with the schematic design, design development, and the construction documents, if we get to that point. But tonight, we just wanted to share with you their conceptual pricing for just architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and cost estimating. So I think you should have that document in front of you on page 3 of their list. So you can have time to think about it. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to entertain those questions. And hopefully next week we can decide whether we want to move forward or which way we want to go.
Mr. Blakeney, I'm going to look silly because I cannot repeat everything you just said.
Okay?
But all of the things that you just said, is that in this 24,420 or no?
Yes, that is in the, for the conceptual drawings to get started.
Okay.
Which includes them, again, evaluating it with electrical, mechanical, and plumbing engineers to come up with a plan. Once they do that plan, then they'll come back to you all. You all will see whether you like this plan, and they will have an estimated cost of that plan through a private estimating firm.
Okay. And Mr. Blakeney, this 24,420, this is only in regards to the 7th and 8th grade wings at the middle school?
That is correct.
Will we be engaging with the architectural firm about the other locations or no?
It's not necessary.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
If it becomes necessary, once you all decide that that's what route we want to go, and if we think that we need to, we will. But at this point, we don't think we need to engage with architectural firms.
We feel pretty solid about the numbers given, the 1.6 million
Yes,
for the renovations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Mr. Blakeney, it appears that once these, we move forward with the estimate given, it says that the district was in the project approximately September.
No.
Okay, talk to me about that date.
Okay, so-
And two, Mr. Blakeney, not just that, but as we move forward with this, after we approve this, then what comes next?
What comes-
And some sort of time frame
So
after that.
that's when we'll have that time frame.
Okay.
Once this is approved, then they will develop those time frames and give us solid times and dates of when things should happen.
Okay.
Yes.
But we will have those, that's why I thought it said September 21st. We assume this project will be contracted as a service order to the master agreement between,
Once it approved, yes. Once
okay.
it is
So we will
approved.
have that no later than September.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's it.
When we approved the September 21st, see? Here's September 21st. Where are you reading September 21st?
Underneath the fees.
Right, with the contract.
The
right,
third
yeah,
page.
Contract, yeah.
Which one?
Third page under number item 6.
I think that's an error.
Okay,
It says, we assume that this project will be contracted as a service order to the master agreement between Carleton that was dated September 21st. That should have been 2022. That's what we
Previously.
approved.
The initial.
That's when we approved the master service agreement.
Okay.
So that's a mistake on their part.
okay.
That's correct.
Any idea then, I mean, once we move forward with this, when we will have that from them?
They're ready.
Okay,
All they need is the board approval and they'll get rolling.
as far as the plans.
Yes.
Right, and the
Yes.
board approval is just to go to next steps to approve that.
Okay.
Just to go
Just-
to, move to the next step. It's not approving anything about the final project. It's just to approve to go to the next step.
That's correct.
It's just approving the $24,420.
That's correct.
So that they can begin to draw the schematic.
Awesome.
I'm sorry,
And bring you back those
my question is unclear. When will the schematic plans then, when can we expect those?
We don't know that until you all make your decision.
Right, but this, I'm moving forward, if this is an action that's taken next week, right? That's what we're looking.
If this action gets approved next week, they will start their work to give us a more detailed timeline and estimated cost.
So they need an okay in order to give us confirmed dates as of when and how?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Go
So-
ahead.
So can I interject just a little bit to give you a little more clarity? Because I think Kenny's just a little apprehensive about saying.
I understand.
And I understand that.
Yes.
He's a little cautioned, and I'm not as cautioned about saying it, because I work directly for you, so I'll be as transparent as I possibly can. They have already, you know how contractors do, or architects do, so that when they started this, we had to be able to tell them what this was going to entail so that they would be able to give us a cost estimate of what the work they were going to do. So in order for them to do that, we had to kind of walk the building so that they would know what it was going to look like, or else they couldn't give us a cost estimate. So actually, they have already probably done a
It's in there.
8.5 by 11 sketch of what it would look like to be able to do it. So I'm not an architect, but I would imagine that scale that they did to that 8.5 by 11 sheet, they're probably going to blow up to the larger scale drawing. So I'm thinking that they have probably started the preliminary work just because we had to give them, they had to walk through the building so we could tell them what our thoughts were so that they could give us the cost estimate, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because
And
they couldn't do it without, they couldn't give us a cost estimate if we couldn't give them at least an idea of what we wanted the work to be done.
it absolutely makes sense.
So I
and-
would think within a week or two, they'll have what we need.
Okay.
That's just me guessing.
Any more
We can ask
questions?
them-
So we're holding you to that, Mr. Blakeney.
Ask them, we
Within a
could
month,
ask
within a
them
month.
before next week's meeting.
Yeah.
Just to find out.
We could ask before
Well,
next week meeting. Kenny can call him on his way home.
Okay, here's the deal. You got to remember, they have not involved the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing engineers yet. That takes time. So it's, even though they've done their preliminary stuff, they still have to get those people more involved to see what we have, to see what it's going to take to get it done.
So in other words, we're holding your hand?
Yes, ma'am.
And as long as we turn your hand loose, then we get more
Yes, ma'am.
information.
Let it go and we'll do what we can do to make it happen.
Okay. Any more questions?
I don't mean to hold your hand. I just am trying to understand the timeline. That's all.
Let it go.
Dr. K, one question that I had from a constituent, clarify why Forest Hills we would not use that for K through 6 like we are doing the schools in the country or out of town?
The number of classrooms.
The enrollment would be too high to do all
For that.
K through 6 at one location, either Northside or for the in-town enrollment estimate would be too large.
She said, why are we going to use why are we using them for 3 through 6 and not the north side?
That as well, but yeah, why
Right.
kindergarten wouldn't be, housed at Forest Hills in their community like they will be in the, out-of-town schools.
So why we wouldn't let both be pre-K through 6?
Right.
It just wasn't large enough to keep both that way with the number of classrooms.
Based on the estimated enrollment that they have right now.
And I can give you that enrollment again. I don't know if I brought it with me, but I could look it up.
To keep it under the, like the schools, when Mr. Blakeney sent us the average enrollment, when I did K through, when we met, we discussed the K through 6 at Northside and at Black Street, and it went over there's like 728 is the limit, I think it is or 768.
For Forest Hills?
768 for Forest Hills, and it went way above that. It was well over 800. And then the same thing happened with Northside, based on their enrollment that they have right now.
And it's
And then
in your,
dividing the preschool.
and it's in your staffing allocation sheets that you have that's embedded in the HR PowerPoint.
Well, I just want to, Mr. Blakeney, I want to reiterate what Ms. Whitkin said. I do not want to hold your hand. I do not want to handcuff you in any way. I want us to get more information as quickly as we can. And let me just say this. I have had an outpouring of teachers and staff over the last couple of weeks who have great concerns about some of this plan moving forward. And let me just mention the two biggest ones that keep coming up. One, I have had teacher after teacher tell me that their school is a family, and they do not want that family to be broken up. And then the other one is there are lots of teachers who have grave concerns about their employment whenever this plan moves forward. So I want us to get as much information as we can, as quickly as we can, so we can address or alleviate some of those fears.
So I've had that. I met with the teacher advisory group, and some of those concerns were shared with me. As I recall from one of my last board meetings with you, I got a directive to make sure that we took care of the staff and that every staff member stayed employed. Right. And I think that came from you, Board Member Irwin, that wanted to make sure that everybody kept their job. That was really important. And that has been a goal with every conversation that I have with the staff. Our goal is to make sure that every employee keeps their job. So no staff is going to go without a job.
Sure.
They'll all have a job. Now, will they stay in their same school? I cannot say they'll all stay at the middle school because the sixth graders are going to have to go back to their various locations.
Sure.
So they'll have to move based upon certification, correct? They'll have to move based upon certification. And they're not going to have a whole lot of choice in where they'll be able to go because their certificate dictates where they're going to be able to have to go. Right, and I know the family. I understand that family. I got that. I know where that is, that family. And that family will just pick up, and this is exactly what I told that family. They'll pick up and they'll just move to their new location because they're all going to go together.
Well, actually, Dr. Cave, and I think this is a good thing, I've heard that from multiple locations,
Okay.
which I think is a great thing that our staff feels that way. And I appreciate...
As I.
I appreciate you just saying all of our staff is going to have a job. Can you speak with
Unless
that?
they decide to leave.
Sure.
Right.
Can you speak with that same certainty in the sense of if I am a first grade teacher now, I'll be a first grade teacher next year, or?
I can't say that if you're a first grade teacher now, you'll be a first grade teacher because I don't get into where staff is placed in terms of that's a building level principal's decision.
Gotcha.
A building level principal may decide, I want to take this teacher and I want to move her to second grade, or I want to take this teacher and I think this is a better fit for third, you know? Yeah, that's a building level
Thank you.
decision.
I want
And
to,
sometimes certificate dictates that as well.
understood. I want to address,
All right.
address concerns about the facility plan as well, in that change is hard. And I also have heard a lot of concerns from teachers just with that change. One thing that I would like to address in that I said at the last meeting when this originally was proposed, my hesitation and reservation about this being implemented next year. And I do think that it's very quick. We will also, with the decision to proceed with this plan, be investing money, which is full steam ahead. And so I just don't take that decision lightly, and there are a lot of things to consider. One of the things that I did not consider the last time that we met and were presented with this option was the discipline board work session that was discussed 2 weeks ago. And during that work session, it was hard as a board member that hears the community concerns that we have and trying to work to address those with our administration. And the main thing that came across was a lot of distrust. And one of the things that I think was overwhelming was the administrator's desire for this alternative school. In order to provide an elementary alternative setting, we've got to change our facilities. And that is going to disrupt the learning environment of our kindergarten and primary learners. And that saddens me. I know it's a wonderful school, and I'm just really struggling with it, and I just wanted to be able to share that, but also to share the support that I feel for the elementary administrators and all of our teachers that struggle with knowing that their students need an alternative learning environment, and our district's desperate need to provide that.
Dr. Cave, I have one more and it's quick, I promise. When we talk about alternative school, you said 40 was our cap. Is that because just of our facilities? Is there any kind of state regulation about how many people can be in alternative school?
No, there's no state regulation. That's because of the size, and you can't put them all, you know.
I got you.
Especially if they all been fighting each other.
Sure.
You can't put all the fighters in the same.
But there's nothing statewide, like
No.
you can only have a certain percentage of your student body or anything? Okay.
No, sir. And,
Thank you.
We have some that are virtual, that not in that 40.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sir. Yes. Well, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I'm just eager, so that we can work everything out. Our priority is our children right now. And I know adults are involved, but I know they will adjust better than our children. So the children is our priority. If we can get, the school system under control, where we can control the learning ability, but as well as the fighting, I think we can do pretty good. Any more? Anyone else? Thank you. You have? Okay. Okay. Yes,
I'm sorry. You're continuing on with your update? Or with something different?
we're doing, mid-year data review?
Okay. I have a question. You tell me when you want me to ask it. From the safety and security, and it may be for Mr. McNeely.
You may do it now. If you have any questions for OEL, which is the Office of Exceptional Learning, or any questions for Mr. McNeely,
Right here.
Real quick, I am am assuming this is just a word choice, but I just want to make sure. On the third paragraph of your Operation Cougar Nation, it says, some students and faculty members have expressed that it is refreshing and nice to see. Does that indicate that there are some who are not happy, or was that just a word choice? Am I just reading too much into it?
I didn't speak to all the staff members at the high school for it, so the ones I spoke to.
So my question is, we have not heard any negatives about Cougar. Thank you. That's all I need. Thank you.
And I'll add something, we're getting ready to do a survey of the staff.
Just about Cougar Nation?
Yes,
Thank you.
we are. If you have any questions for OEL or any questions for technology.
I have a question for Dr. Baddock.
Okay.
In the Student Support Services report, and that was in the information that was given and is posted on the website for registration and student transfers. The website indicates that only certain schools allow for transfers, and the board just revisited that policy to make sure that we have the students that have attendance and discipline are those that are considered for that. I did not know that we were limiting the transfers. Is that, there was any explanation on that as to why certain schools wouldn't allow for transfers?
Can you hear me okay?
I can, I don't know if the audience can.
The mic is for the audio.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So we based the decision to have those schools listed as accepting transfers from the public, not the staff within the school district, based on the number of students in the other schools. So the decision was driven by our enrollment projections for all of the schools. And those are the schools that have the greatest capacity to take in transfers.
Understood. And I assume that was the case. We just visited the policy on transfers last spring, and I'm just going to say that when those type of decisions are made, if you could share that information with board members, we're obviously hearing from the community. The desire is often because of our labor force to come into town. So often you know that those transfers are for inner city schools. And so when we don't offer that, they come knocking on our doors.
Yeah.
And so releasing that information to the public before the board, it allows us to be able to echo the sentiments of the district when explaining that. And so that's always helpful information for us. And that's all.
Okay, yes, I'll do that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I hear none.
Okay, so it's time for our mid-year data review, as well as the designations. I sent you some information today. Ms. Whitkin asked me would I send it as soon as it was released, and I sent it as soon as it was released. It didn't come out until
This morning.
late, 10:30. So it came out at 10:30, I sent it to you at 12:30.
Yes, ma'am,
So I
you
got
did.
it out as soon as we could
Thank
get it out to you. And I still think they might have one error, we have asked. So we'll see whether or not that error gets corrected. Okay? So Ms. McDonald is going to come, and she's going to do the part about our iReady data, and then I'm going to come back and join her with our designations. I may ad lib as we go along a little bit. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, community members, and community stakeholders. As Dr. Cave indicated, I'm here tonight to give you some information about our formative assessment data. Just for background information, the State Department has a list of approved formative assessments that all districts must select their assessment of choice from. And currently, there are 3 of them on the list. And whatever assessment a district chooses to use, all students in grades kindergarten through grade 9 must participate in this assessment in reading and math 3 times a year. And that is in the fall the winter, and the spring. So this year we chose to use iReady. And so now you know a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing is because it is mandated by law that our students participate in our formative assessments. So let's talk a bit about our I can't hear you.
Too heavy, it's too big of a file, so it wouldn't show. Just keep it.
Okay, all right. So just to give you kind of where we started the year at and the process that we used for training our teachers, preparing for our assessments, the assessment process, and then what we did with that data once we got the data. So at the beginning of the year, we had training before school started to train our teachers on what iReady was, what we can do with the platform. And then once students came in our building, we met with teachers again prior to testing, just to go back over the testing process, just the logistics of how the test is given to students. And from that process, then we also talked to teachers about how to set up their testing sessions in their classrooms so that we get the best data possible. Because we want a student to come into their test session and do their very best. We want to know what the student knows and what the student does not know so that we can then provide a personalized learning path for them so that they can make improvements prior to the next testing window. In addition to that, after we had the testing window in the fall, the consultants came back and met with teachers on their in their PLC days and showed them how to get to the reports to know how their students did, and also to know where to go to look at the progress their students were making in their personalized learning pathway. So I'm gonna kind of stop and keep going. Yeah, right there. So we began personalized learning back in September and October. So as we all know from any process that you go in, if you don't monitor the process and know what your students are doing, then you may not get the results that you want to get. So research from iReady indicates that if students use their personalized learning path for 45 minutes a week in reading and 45 minutes a week for math, with a 70% passage rate, that their achievement data at the end of the year will be significantly impacted. That is their greatest opportunity to show growth in their achievement. So throughout this time, BJ, go to the next slide, please. We recognize schools each month for the highest percentage of students with their time on task and the highest percentage of lessons passed. So in those 2 months that we did, we looked at this data. We looked at it in November and we looked at it in October. And both months, we'd like to recognize that Northside was the school that had the highest time on task and lessons passed. So if you move to the next slide, you will then see that, ironically, Bells Elementary won it both months for their lessons passed and time on task. Schools also took on initiatives to recognize their students and teachers in classrooms for their time that they've done, the lessons that they've passed, the time on task, just the number of lessons completed. And this is just an example of one school and what they did as recognizing a class. I have seen, like iReady Little Stores, where when they met their goal, they went and were able to cash in a little ticket for some object that they could buy or from what they've earned. And they got their picture taken, and the picture got sent home to the parents. So now that you know a little bit about the pathway of trying to make a difference between where the students were in the fall and where they are now. So let's take a look and see what our data shows us. So when you look at student performance, there's two ways to look at data. You can look at achievement, which means where the student actually is. And then you can look at growth. So you can see, okay, this is where they started in the fall, and this is where they are now. So when we look at achievement, there were two types of reports given: grade level placement, so whether they're on grade level or below grade level, and then also the projected proficiency to SE Ready performance, because that's also important. And then when you look at growth, growth is also important, because as you remember on our state report card, growth, you earn the same number of growth points as you do achievement points. So we also want to keep that in mind. So there are two types of growth, and that is annual growth, which is typical growth that you'd expect of a child, 1 year's worth of growth. Not all of our students are on level, and we have students who have more room to grow. And so many times you see students who are reaching what's called a stretch goal. And so those stretch goals means that they've actually grown more than a year's worth of growth in a certain length of time. So now let's move forward and let's look at our grade level placements. So this chart shows our reading progress. So the green indicates on grade level, and the yellow is slightly below grade level, and red means there's 2 or more grade levels behind. As you can see in the beginning of the year, we had 16% of our students that were on grade level, and when we took this assessment in the winter, we progressed to have 25% of our students on grade level. And while we recognize that we're not where we want to be, there is positive progress in our data. And then if you move forward to the next slide and look at math, this is in correlation to our SE Ready data last year. And if you remember mathematics, COVID played a large impact on our math data. And if you remember our SE Ready data, ELA has rebounded to a prior COVID level, however, math has not. And so while we have made progress for the percentage of students on grade level from 6% to 15%, we do recognize that we do have a lot of work that needs to be done in the area of math. So if we move forward to the next slide, this slide provides information on the projections to SE Ready. So if our students earn just their annual growth, just 1 year's worth of growth, which is what we should expect from them in 1 year, you will see that currently our district is projected to have 21% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations on SE Ready and reading. And you can see the various schools and their percentages on this slide also. So if you move forward to the math, not to the math, to the next slide, if we could get some of our students to move forward and not just earn their annual growth, but their typical growth, their stretch growth, you can see that instead of having 21% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations, we moved to 27% meeting or exceeding expectations. And that is at this point in the year with what they've learned. Remember, we still have many weeks of instruction left before we take the next diagnostic in iReady. So hopefully between the time of now and the end of the spring semester, they will have learned more material, they've been exposed to more instruction, and so hopefully they will, this data will increase. But if they were to take it today and they achieve their stretch growth, you would see that 27% of them would be meeting or exceeding expectations on SE Ready. So if you look at the math, you will see that we have 12% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations projected if we had just annual typical growth. And if you move to the stretch growth, that number increases to 18%. And I just want to remind you that while 12 sounds bleak, we had 13.8% score meeting and exceeding on SE Ready last year. So if we could get them to stretch growth, we will show progress, and we still have weeks of instruction left. So we are really, we have some strategies in just a minute that we're going to talk about to try to hopefully make sure that more of our students reach their stretch growth and that we're providing some additional opportunities for instruction. So if you move to the next slide, you will look at, so we've talked about growth already, and you can look and see on this slide the percentages of students who've met the half of their growth. So if you look at the top part of the chart in reading, you can see by grade level, kindergarten is at 43% midway through the year. And then it goes through 8th grade, where you see 47% of our 8th graders have met half of their expected growth. So you can see where we are with the percentages of meeting half of their growth. And the bottom part gives you their stretch growth. So if you move to the math slide, you will see that kindergarten, it ranges from 60% in kindergarten to 53% in 8th grade for annual growth. And then you can see the percentages for stretch growth at the bottom by grade level. So now that we know where we're at, we wanted to know that there was some improvements that could be made in what we're doing. And one of the pieces that we wanted to implement was the personalized pathway gives the student instruction based on where they're at. Some of our students are on grade level, but some of our students, a lot of our students, are not on grade level. So currently, they're receiving instruction in iReady not on their grade level, trying to get them to master those standards so that they could get them closer to being on grade level. However, we know that whenever they're tested in the spring, they're not going to be tested at that level. They're going to be tested on their grade level. So what we wanted to do is implement what's called standards mastery in iReady. What standards mastery is grade level material, grade level assessments, and they're very short. We have the ability to add how many items on this assessment. It's based on our state standards. So we've been very intentional about using some of the sample items from the State Department, some recently released documents from the State Department that indicated what misconceptions occurred on last year's SE Ready test, and to look at our priority standards within the State Department's documents to know which standards do we want to make sure our students are mastering. And so what this program allows us to do is to give them a 4 to 5 item quiz. It's not intended for more than 15-20 minutes. It's done during their intervention block. It's not for a grade in the grade book. It's simply my Weight Watcher scale check when I step on the scales to see how I'm doing. They're going to give us feedback with an item analysis for the students. We will know who got right answers, who got wrong answers. In addition to that, the greatest tool about any of this that I've seen is that once We have that information with a click of a button. You go to a PDF document and it provides the teacher with a lesson that they can do with those students so that they can reteach them. The teacher does not have to come up with anything. There's a teacher document, there's a student document. If it's a passage, if it's a graphic organizer, it's all right there for them. And then once they do that in small groups, they receive small group instruction during the week. Once the teacher feels like they're ready, they will receive a second test for some students who haven't mastered the standard. They will receive a second test, and it will be, again, short 4 to 5 questions to make sure that our students have mastered that standard that we feel like is going to show up in the spring. So now we've kind of put alongside one another grade level material, but we've also put together some personalized learning to make sure we're still not forgetting that they're struggling. We still need to meet them where they're at, but we also need to expose them to what they need to see and prepare for in the spring. One of the best features of some of these items in the bank of items is that the question types are so varied. There's drag and drop, there's listen to a video or looking at a piece of art, or just many different pieces, multiple answers. So like there might be 8 answers and the student has to pick the best 3, or maybe they pick an answer and then there's a part B where they have to find the evidence to support their answer in part A. So a lot of it looks very similar to what the students would be asked to do in the spring. In addition to that, we will monitor in grade level planning meetings how well these are going with the teachers. Schools already have data walls and data charts to make sure that we are progressing with those, and making sure that we continue to recognize success, because success, a pat on the back, will go a long way in continuing to build more success. And lastly, I want to end my part with something that I think I've heard from board members is, what did the teachers think? So after every PD session, I already gives them a QR code. It's all, they don't know who answers what. And so some of the comments you can see on here, but one of the best ones, or one that I'd like to highlight, is that one teacher wrote, "The content was informative and useful for my purposes in analyzing student data and to create the next steps in their learning." Great data analysis tool. This tool is with the click of a button. Teachers don't have to spend time finding out how their students are doing or where they're at.
Okay, I'll take over from here.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
McDonald. Looks like a great job.
She does. She's done a great job. Thank you so very much, Ms. McDonald, for sharing our iReady mid-year report. Do you have any questions about our iReady mid-year report? Okay, thank you. I sent to you earlier today our school designations, so I want to take the opportunity just to briefly go over that with you. That information came out today. It's on the State Department's website. It's on the report cards. So I want to go over the key points about the designations. As you know, at our board retreat, we gave you some information about what the designations were going to be. The designations are CSI, priority, we have ATSI, and we have TSI. Those are the designations for schools. There are also other designations, but those designations are not necessarily denoted on any website at this time. Maybe you could have some underperforming schools, you could have some schools that have various subgroup information. I'd like to go over some of the key points. Overall, all of our schools, Bells, Forest Hills Elementary, Hendersonville, as well as Colleton County Middle School, were designated as priority schools from 2017 to 18, as you are well aware. They exited the list this year, 22-23, which we're really proud of that. However, we have two newly identified priority schools, and that's Colleton County High School, unfortunately, as well as Northside Elementary, unfortunately. Bells Elementary School is not identified on any school improvement list, so I'd like to congratulate Bells. They are totally exited the list. There are some other key points that I would like to bring to your attention because although we have made progress, we do have a long ways to go. So we have to definitely put some interventions in place to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our children. The subgroups of students with disabilities has been identified as a subgroup that we really need to work with. So Dr. Baddock and her staff, we are working, and they are working really hard so that we can make some changes in terms of how we are providing instruction to our children. So our subgroups that are providing us with some challenges now are our students with disabilities. And we have several schools that are on the list because of our students with disabilities. It doesn't mean that our children cannot perform. It just means that they need more time to develop, and we need more time to spend on that standard. So we have to work with the children in all of our schools, but Cottageville Elementary, Forest Hills Elementary, Hendersonville Elementary, Colleton County Middle School, all of those schools are designated as an ATSI with that subgroup designation because of our students with disabilities. Okay? All right, so let's go on. Then we have Bells, Forest Hills, Hendersonville, and Colleton County have increased their number of points, so we're really happy with that on their school report card since 2018 and 19. And Cottageville increased their points in 18 and 19, but then they remained constant this past year. All right. Unfortunately, as I said, Colleton County High and Northside, they decreased their points, which resulted in their ratings, one of their ratings actually changing. So let's look at the next slide. So let's look at where we are. So to recap, we have Bells in the green. You'll see 17, 18. We had 4 priority schools. Now we have only 2 priority schools. That's Northside and Colleton County High. The other 4 have exited the list. Let's go to the next slide. ATS schools, ATSI schools, we have Bells has no designation whatsoever. And then we have the other ATSI schools, because of the subgroup of students with disabilities, is Cottageville, Forest Hills, Hendersonville, as well as Colleton County Middle School. Okay? And then we have one other school that's a TSI, has a TSI designation, and that is Forest Hills, and that is because of our black subgroup, our African American subgroup. Okay? And we need to make sure that we provide as much instruction and intervention, enrichment, whichever we need, in order to move those children forward. Okay? So let's look at where we are with our report card ratings and the longitudinal data that we have there. All right? So historically, 17, 18, this is where our schools were. Unsatisfactory, below average, unsatisfactory, unsatisfactory, below average, unsatisfactory, average. In 18, 19, we had some growth, wonderful growth, and I denoted the growth by the green, where we had schools to improve, really proud of that. 18, 19, and 20, nothing was given, they paused it. None was given. And then in 2021, they paused it because of COVID. And then 2021, this past year, these are our designations as is. Bells went to a good, Cottageville below average, Forest Hills below average, Hendersonville increased from unsatisfactory to below average. Northside went from average to unsatisfactory. Cottageville middle, really proud. They went from below average to average. And then Colleton County High, while they decreased, their rating stayed the same, they did decrease their overall report card rating. That ends where we are. I did speak with the State Department today so that we could talk about the support that would be provided. They are working on the support that will be provided to our school district. With the designation will come some funding. They are working on what that will look like. I did want to be able to tell you what the total, I think I sent you the link so you could read that at your leisure, but our CSI schools went from 40 in 2019 to 56 this year. Our ATSI schools went from 207 in 2019 to 345 this year. And I'm telling you this because the pot of money may be a little slimmer, depending upon how they divvy that up. In 2019, there was not a TSI designation that was reported, and we have 21 this year. And priority schools, there were 80, and now we have 78. I wanted to make you aware, but you do have the link for all of that information. Do you have any questions for us or for me?
Just a question about our special needs students and the subgroup ATSI, and how, this is probably a question that may be something that can be worked on for explanation at a later time, but I just wanted to find out what district thoughts are, knowing that subgroup and how our facilities will change potentially soon, how, for instance, the elementary setting might change and how we would do.
I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm giving you my recommendation for what I think needs to happen. And I'll be really honest with you, Ms. Whitkin. I don't believe that our service model meets the needs of our students. Right now, we have a service model that's resource. That means our children are pulled out and they provide their services in a classroom with a resource teacher that provides the instruction with the supplemental curriculum. And this is just my opinion in terms of my years of working with children. I believe that our children need to have grade level content because they have to take the test. The majority of our children in our school district have to stand and take the test on their grade level. I believe that we need to be able to have inclusionary practices for our children, and that we need to have a co-teaching type of model where those children are included in the classroom. Now, is that going to go across well with everybody in the district? Probably not. Will teachers have to think about teaching a little bit differently? They will. Will we ease into that? Quite naturally, we might be able to do something like that with the identified schools. But we do need to change the way we serve our specially identified children. And Dr. Baddock and her very capable staff, they're working on changing our model. I hope that answers your question.
It gives a good start, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
And I just think that, we've never had it distinguished like this before in the subgroups. So
Yes,
just
ma'am.
continuing to learn as much as we can about how our district is addressing those needs helps
Yes,
us to
ma'am.
better understand these distinctions. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We have a lot of work to do with making sure that our children, our instruction is scaffolded to meet their needs, and that we teach them on grade level content, but in a differentiated manner. Does that help? You might want to add some
I think
from the
Dr.
expert.
Cave did a terrific job explaining that. What I would like to say to the board is that all of the research that's been conducted in the field of education suggests that students with disabilities, when exposed to the general education curriculum, they naturally grow. And that's the piece that's missing. If we're pulling them out, they're not being exposed to the curriculum, to the delivery of the new content, and then the discussions that ensue following that delivery. So we're not suggesting that they don't ever go to a resource room. They may, some of their IEPs may prescribe that they need to have some supplemental curriculum or replacement curriculum to address deficiencies. However, we would first like to see them exposed to the general education content in the hope that they're just acquiring information naturally by virtue of being present in that room.
Can I just offer a comment? I know nothing about special education, but I have heard from several teachers this week about this, so I think it's funny that it came up. the idea of doing away with resource and moving more to inclusion. And not only were all of the ones who spoke to me completely against that, but another concern just to be thought of in that one of their concerns was the discipline issue. Whenever you have kids that are normally pulled out and getting more one-on-one attention, leaving them in the classroom and having to deal with those behaviors. So that's just a comment from conversations that I've had this week. I do want to say real quick, though, a lot of information, a lot of words given to us, and I appreciate everyone's diligence in doing that. But just to kind of summarize this, if my math is correct, on the English language arts, in the winter of all of our students assessed, 76% of our students are one grade level below or more. Math is 86% of our students assessed are one grade level or below. And then with our designation, our school designations, 5 of our 7 schools are below average or below. So
That is correct.
just to me, devastating numbers and data, and
I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly with you. They are devastating numbers.
Are there districts close to us that model the inclusion and do that well with their special ed population?
I would have to see what some of the other models are. I come from a district that did inclusionary practices, and there are other districts around us that do inclusionary practices. I haven't checked to see whether or not they do them well. I don't know that.
I can add that I have worked in districts that use an inclusive model and not an entirely inclusive model, and that's not what we're suggesting here. Many years ago, decades ago, school districts went to full inclusion for every student. What we learned over time was that that wasn't necessarily the best thing for all students. So placement of students and programming will still be determined based on the needs of each individual student. And I do expect, and you should expect, that there will be pushback from the teachers because it's going to require a different approach to teaching. They're going to have to teach in tandem with the special education teachers, and they're going to have to expand upon their bag of tricks, so to speak, because they're going to have to work with all students. And in many ways, it's beneficial for the students functioning on grade level and below, because one group is learning tolerance and acceptance of diversity, and they're learning to model and help their fellow students, while the other group is modeling the behavior of the first group. So they're aspiring to do more, to be better, to grow. So it will not be without bumps, make no mistake, but I do think overall it's the right thing because all of this data tells us what you're doing here in terms of students with disabilities is not working. So we need to make a change, and Dr. Cave and I and the team, we spoke about how to do that in a way that's not so abrupt that it's not digestible. We're aware that we need to do it gradually.
Yes.
And that is good to hear because children with special need was always a priority to me. And I think when I started, it's like I had lots of call coming in. So just the idea of that you are working toward making it better, just like the grades, it may not be a significant increase, but there is an increase. So there is options for growth. So if we continue to work towards, I feel that we can accomplish a lot.
Just want to highlight, because we hear a lot of negative, and I always like to look at the positives. Our middle school had a growth to move them into a new level. The points
They
increase
certainly
got
did.
them to an average, so I know that's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of
with our
celebration.
middle school teachers and students to get to that average rating. So I know we hear a lot of the negatives, so I really want to highlight the middle school growth as well as others that jumped in points but maybe didn't change a category, fully. So those point growths that we, of course, saw at Bells, Forest Hills with point growth, Hendersonville, and I just mentioned the middle school. So those points mean a lot. If you don't know, those categories are hard to get.
Right, they certainly are, and thank you for that. We had schools that jumped categories, so we're really proud of those schools. Middle school did fabulous.
There's no other
Under
questions?
Ms. Behe, that's wonderful. She did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Human Resources, Mr. Murdock?
Ms. Hamilton,
Good evening.
good evening.
Just want to bring to your attention that we did conduct our certified intent survey, intent to return. And you see the results there in comparison to last year. And I'm willing to answer any questions you may have about the intent survey. In addition, HR will bring certified recommendations to you next month for your consideration so that we can go ahead and issue contracts in April and have those returned no later than the May 10th deadline. And also, we have some recruitment efforts that we talked about before, just retention bonuses and possible referral bonuses, but that will all be contingent upon your planning and approval.
Ms. Hamilton?
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Do you want us to ask questions
Sure.
now? Is it okay?
Just- yeah.
So those retention bonuses and referral bonuses, you said they're dependent on board planning and approval. So is that in this year's budget process for next year?
I put it on my wish list.
Okay.
It's quite robust, but but I do have a wish list with hopes of retaining staff. And I know I indicated here 10-year mark, but we kind of want to do it incremental and do a recognition bonus opposed to a retention bonus. So 5, 10, 15, 20.
Okay.
So that way employees know as I meet this mark, I'm going to get something for coming back.
So staff won't know whether or not they would receive that type of bonus until after their signed contract, because that's when the budget would be approved.
That's correct.
But it's something to discuss now to know that it may be a good possibility. For
Absolutely,
them. Thank you.
absolutely. Something else that in our HR huddle that we want to propose is an absentee. That's kind of negative, but just to reward employees for coming to work, a bonus during our hard months like March and then November till Christmas break. You know, people don't report to work. So if you do this, thinking about how can we incentivize them for reporting to work.
Sounds good.
Very good. Ms. Hamilton,
Yep.
the 27 certified staff members who expressed that they do not intend to return, was that an intent survey just a simple yes or no, or do we know the reasons why they don't intend to return?
Yeah, we don't ask the reason why. However, if they don't, the 27 will submit something to our office as to, we want to solicit feedback from them. But the survey is just tell me, yes, I intend to return. I do not intend to return. I plan to retire. I want to retire, but return. It helps us to plan for the individuals who want to be here.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
And then, per your request, it was embedded the staffing needs for the new facility plan. I'm open to answer any questions you may have about that.
Ms. Hamilton, I did take a look at that, those Excel spreadsheets, and thank you. I know your administrator mind was heavy at work as y'all were putting that together. I wanted to make note, I was very appreciative of a lot of, it looks like administrative positions that have been added in the facility changes, so that if at the elementary level, city schools have, it looks like a change in administrators.
A change in administrators
For
as far as
instance,
numbers?
Right.
Yes.
Forest Hills has two as well as Northside.
Yes.
Okay.
Just for enrollment.
And that also, that's based on the number of students that the
Correct.
administrators had to change?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And to ensure that no one's losing a position.
So, and then an assistant principal at Bells?
I didn't hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. That would be an addition.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I think that's great. the student-to-staff ratio that we're using to kind of estimate the staff needs feels high.
Yeah, and I can share that. I will have Ms. Cheryl share the 22-23 South Carolina Department of Education accreditation guidelines, of which we got those numbers, those student-to-teacher ratios for every grade level or grade band.
I know what the minimum is, or the maximum.
Yeah.
The maximum is, and those numbers are cringeworthy.
Yeah.
And I hope that they're not what our standard is going to be moving forward. I know that we have to first appropriately staff, and then we may add to it. And my hope and prayer is that we are able to add to that because, you know, as a mom, I'm not dropping my kid off in a class of 35 kids for a third grade. That's crazy. And I say that with concern and not out of anything other than I think our district can and should do better. And it's just alarming in the way that the staff drop last May was for me to see those kind of numbers. And I know you have to start first with what you have to have, and then you can add to. And I'm really hopeful we add to.
And just to add to that, our office literally today just completed a supply and demand report for the state. And that was sent out to all HR directors across the state because they want to make sure that we're not hiring ourselves into a teacher shortage, and that we are following those accreditation guidelines as prescribed. So I just wanted them to make you aware that that report did go out today, and we submitted ours immediately. So,
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
I don't have a question. I think I have a comment. I heard respectfully what you just said, that the state doesn't want to put us in a teacher shortage, but I have great confidence in you as our HR director, that you are going to be able to recruit teachers. I echo the sentiments of Ms. Whitkin. 35 kids, 40 kids in a classroom. I think if those numbers get out to our teachers, if those numbers were published prior to your intent survey, I'm afraid our numbers may have been a little bit different.
Just because, and I hate to interrupt you, but because we're on record, I just want to say these are not Colleton County, Wilsey, Hamilton numbers.
Sure.
These are straight off the State Department accreditation guidelines,
sure,
of which all HR personnel directors are charged to adhere to.
Right, and I appreciate you clarifying that, but I remember, what was it, 2 years ago, that we had a meeting, I don't even remember where it was now, but it was packed with teachers. It was right at the start of the SC for Ed campaign or whatever, where teachers, their number one concern was class size, right? And so we were doing everything we could to lower class size, and it seems like now it's going in the opposite direction. And I understand the variables,
yeah,
but I have great faith in you that these numbers will not be the numbers that we're faced with.
Two, just in the proposed staffing needs, could those schools specifically, with what we just got in information, priority schools, or if they have a distinction also by the state, the ATIs and those type of things, could they add paraprofessionals to help reduce the, I know that the certified teacher to staff ratio would maybe still be high, but we would have additional staffing to help?
So we have discussed that preliminarily. How that would look, we're not quite sure yet, because we want to employ what we have before we add on, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that everyone is placed somewhere within their capacity.
Understood. And as those dollars come in and, the aid to our those schools come, I just want to stress my preference for use to your department and HR. I think the greatest asset that we can offer our students is people.
Absolutely. And I want to say this just, so 35 or the 30 to 1, 35 to 1, 40 to 1, those are all recommended. I don't foresee us getting there. Just as a former school principal, I don't see the helm of the school allowing that to happen without consulting with district level personnel. However, we wanted to make this board aware that this is what the accreditation guidelines is expecting of us, if that makes sense. Okay?
So if we get to those numbers, will there be a possibility of getting like an assistance in the classroom?
Yes, ma'am. So that's similar to what Ms. Wicken just asked, and that's certainly in preliminary conversation. We're having preliminary conversations about that and how to support teachers. Will every teacher have an aide? No. Will we try to give support to grade levels? Absolutely.
Well, remember, we're already in a budget excess that we use ESSER funds for, so how are we going to be able to afford TAs for classrooms?
Priority school funds.
She said priority school funds. All right. Any other questions for me?
We're not getting much of that.
I know. I can only hope.
Thank you for making it clear that
Yep.
those aren't the numbers you want,
No.
but I want to go on record that we just looked at test scores that say our students need smaller ratios.
Yep.
And you and I aren't so far removed from the classroom of teaching
Yeah.
32 to 35, and taking it to 40 is really out of the park.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't want to go there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All righty.
We're going to do our best not to go there by any means.
We will now have finance, Ms. Strobel.
Ms. Barrett, we're happy to hear what reports you want to give us tonight, and of course, we'll take action next week.
Thank you. Good evening to the board. Okay, of course, this is our budget time of the year, and I just want to update you what we're doing as far as getting ready for preparation of our budget. The purpose of the school budget development process is to estimate the funds to operate the school department educational and support the programs for the upcoming year. The budget development begins with the formation and the distribution of individual school and department head budget materials that we give out to the department so they can make their wish list and what they need. Okay. Carleton County School District, we will be facing some unique challenges, not only us, but other school districts too. We are entering our final year of ESSER funds. And as you know, last year we had to balance the budget with ESSER funds. Planning from phasing out from the additional funding that we were getting now from ESSER will require prioritizing resources and identifying alternative funding sources. So we are beginning in the process of gathering all the information. We have met with most of the department heads. We met with most of the school principals, and we are getting all of their wish lists together with the capital projects, any additional funds they may need for their operational budget. And we have a list of their ongoing commitments, like what do they already have contracts in place, so we need to know all of that so we can start the budget year. We know it's going to be challenging for us, and we hope that we can get through the process. Right now, I'm looking at the state legislation and see what they're doing, and they haven't given us too much numbers. They're only giving us things that they want to have, but we don't have any definite numbers yet. So once the process begins to start, I will bring forth a budget, the first reading, a second reading, and a third reading, and that'll be our final reading based on the numbers that we're going to get from the State Department. Any question about that? Okay. I'm going to do the revenue and expenditure comparison. Okay, we have our local fund, local revenue, which is our general fund. And also I want to say that in our local revenue, we do budget transfers from our EIA fund, which is our state funds, that we transfer out, and we're allowed to do that to put in the general fund. And that's what we do on a monthly basis. We transfer money that our EIA state fund, and we transfer it into the general fund to help us balance our budget. So we do that on a monthly basis. The EFA funding, you know, that's no longer, they took that away from us. That was based on the student-based course. We don't do that anymore. Now we have our EIA funding, which increased $1.3 million, was averaged about, well, our general fund increased $648,000, which averaged to about 11.5% of increase in our general fund revenue. Our EFA fund, we don't do that anymore, so there was nothing there. The EIA fund is our state fund, which include all of our state funds is our EIA funds. And then that was an increase of $1.3 million, and that was a percentage increase of 17.9%. And our federal funds, all of our federal funds that we get from the federal government, that an increase of $487,000 approximately. The food service had an increase of $551,771, and that's about 13.5%. And I want to say, but sometimes with these federal funds, you don't get the money all the time when you need it. Like right now, normally we get our federal funds in November, and we just getting our federal funds in February. So there's always a lag of time when we get our funding source. So that's why it's very important for us to have a good general fund balance, which is the school district savings account, because we have to foot all of these other expenses until money comes in from, we can claim these funds. And sometimes it can be an enormous amount. When you're looking at our ESSA funds, it could be up to $1 million or something that we have to foot from the general fund until all those funds come in. The expenditures, like the general fund, was decreased from last year, this time in January up until now, at $584,000 approximately. The decrease, which was 17.14%. Our special revenue increased 26.41%, which is $136,000 approximately. Our federal fund, we had a decrease of $442,000 and some change, which is approximately increase of 43.4%. Food service had a decrease in expenditures of $11,403, which is about 3.89%. And our total decrease for all of our expenditures was 17.18%. Any questions?
When you talk about money that you don't have yet and you have to use different sets of money, that's where the transfers come into?
No, sir. What that means is that we have in our general fund a certain amount of money that we have. Our general fund budget, like let's say we have like federal funds. We only claim federal funds every quarter, but we pay those expenditures out all the time. Every time for payroll, every time for supplies, whatever. We pay those expenditures out, but we don't have that money yet. So we have to claim the federal government, well, the state, to claim that money in order for it to come back into our general fund operational. But the EIA funds are funds that we get, that we transfer from the EIA account to the general fund on a monthly basis.
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. I will be bringing back all the wish lists that everybody in the district wants, so.
Don't do that. Just bring back a balanced budget. That's all. I'll do all that. You tell everybody no and sort through that for us.
I don't want to be the heavy on everybody.
Yes, we understand. Thank you. Curriculum and instruction, Mr. Irwin.
Oh, Miss Jessica Williams. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Very excited to hear from you.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Board members, you have a copy of my report, and I would just like to emphasize a few things in the report. The district hosted the annual stakeholders meeting on this past Thursday evening, and it was a huge success. We had over 60 participants who came to the meeting, and we received great feedback on our strategic plan update, as well as the Cognia accreditation process that we're going through as well. So we take all of that feedback, type it all up, and we look at it and we utilize it to update our plans. Our audience that night was a mixture of, we had school school district employees. We also had community partners. We had elected officials. So we had a good cross-representation at the meeting. The meeting was very good. Also, I just wanted to point out that we are in the process of planning for our summer learning experience, which will occur this summer. And as you are aware, we did receive a grant through the Wallace Foundation, and we are now a member of a national summer learning network. And being a member of this network allows us to connect with educators across the country to glean ideas about how to plan for more innovative summer learning. So we're really excited about that. My team has written 2 grants. They're working on 2 grants to support our summer learning experience. And we also have a design team that's made up of teachers, principals, some parents are a part of that as well. And we meet on a monthly basis to talk about how we can make summer programs different for our students. And that ends my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Jessica, I have a couple. On the last page of your report, assessment and accountability, you talk about the EOC exams. When will we get those results from those?
So those results are embargoed until the end of the year.
The end of the school year?
The end of the school year.
Okay. Embargoed. Made me spell big words. So I'm had some teachers come to me with some concerns. I don't know if this is considered PD or not, but training like letters training, ed farm, stuff like that. Are we requiring our teachers to stay after or do work after in any of these programs?
So specific to the programs that you just named?
Or any at all?
So the only one that teachers stay after school for training is letters. However, teachers are paid by the State Department to attend that training.
And they're
paid additional funds.
And they are getting those payments?
Those payments have been being processed. I had to send in a listing before Christmas break, and they told me that it's like a 2 to 3 month process for them to process everything and get those checks sent.
Okay.
So we are looking for those checks to be here hopefully by the end of February. That information was communicated to our schools, but that's a State Department process. It's not ours. It does not go through our finance department.
Okay, I appreciate that because I got yelled at like I had their checks. So I'm glad for that clarification on that. And I just want to say this, and then I'll give other board members their opportunity. And I don't want you to get mad at me for saying this because I keep saying it. When we look at those numbers that we just had of our students who are behind, I really want us to focus on letting our teachers teach. I want them to be in the classroom doing what we hired them to do. We have got to figure out a way to not be pulling our teachers out and eliminating those instructional time, right? So that's just my comment.
Okay.
And I trust that, I trust all of our directors that you will handle those situations. Thank you. Any other board members?
I have a question for Ms. Williams about the summer learning program, specific to the promotion, retention, and acceleration policy, IKE, and that we just passed that. How does that affect summer learning preparations? Do we have any indicators? I know you mentioned the need for the grants that would help supplement the summer programs that you're planning for, but will that affect our staffing, or what are we doing differently by way of the policy?
No, our summer learning not only encompasses those students who are struggling and are not passing, but our summer programs also include enrichment and those students who may not be struggling, who may be passing all of their grades. So summer programs is designed to invite everyone who wants to come. We started last year, Dr. Cave brought in lots of different partners for us, and this year we're expanding upon that. And then to answer your question about the promotion retention, we are starting early to look at those students who may be struggling and who may need to come to summer school. We have a timeline. We've developed a timeline as far as summer programs is concerned as to what we need to do when, so that we'll make sure that all of our processes are done in a timely manner. But we're looking at those students like at the third quarter. We're going to look at their grades and look at other data sources to figure out who needs to come. And teachers are having those conversations on an ongoing basis and letting parents know early as well. As well as we have a critical decision form that was implemented that has all of the student information on it, and that form is given to parents every 9 weeks as well to inform them. So parents are well informed and are given interventions and different things to do and to help their children, as well as the interventions that take place at school and in the classrooms.
Thank you for that information. My concern was focused a lot more on that policy, just out of concern that we'd have an increased number of students this year with that IKE policy being, more stringent and just making sure that we're preparing. So thank you for sharing about your
And I can
timeline.
also add that I know at the middle school level, they're doing lots of great things. They're having Saturday school and doing different interventions to curb that number of students, at the end of the year who may need to come to summer school.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, I've had some concerns with some changes that are being made, and I'm not clear if it doesn't fit under your umbrella for curriculum instruction. I know it affects students if they're not in school. So with FAs, how's that's being handled? I hear there are a lot of them, and I just wondered if you could bring us that, if not tonight, another time.
Okay. Well, I know students are given opportunities during the school year to clear FAs. So that's being done along, so that, as I told Ms. Whitkin, at the end of the year, you won't have all of those students who need to clear those FAs. So they're given opportunity during the year. But if you need additional information, I can get that for you and have it for you at the next meeting.
Thank you. If you just bring an update so we'll be clear. I'm hearing
I
a
will.
change from $25 for seat time where they make up their time for being absent to $50. But seniors not having to pay, and just, I'm not clear. So
Okay.
if you clear us up on that so we can be in support.
Most definitely.
Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Williams? Ms. Williams, I have one more thing, and I promise it's quick.
Okay.
At our progressive discipline plan meeting, Dr. Cave and I were having a side conversation. And Dr. Cave, I don't know if it was you or I who expressed it through the microphone, the issue of less Chromebook time. I got lit up over the last 2 weeks since that progressive discipline plan. Teachers, I have not had one teacher come to me and say, I enjoyed the amount of time our students are on the Chromebook. Every single teacher I've heard from says we need to get the kids off from the Chromebooks more. And I know Dr. Cave said she was working on that, maybe a no Chromebook day and stuff. But it was amazing to me. Not one teacher came to me and said, hey, I love them. Everything's going great. Every one of them. Most of the teachers that came to me said, can we get rid of them altogether? So, I know because of data and all that kind of stuff, but really, if we can find a way to maybe get away from that screen time, that would be, I know a lot of our teachers are expressing that.
And Dr. Cave did express that to me. We have had conversation, and she does have some different strategies that she's thinking of employing to help that issue.
And I know she said no technology day. Maybe if we just change that to no technology days. Plural.
You push it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have Operation Stavanger.
Good evening. You have my report, but I would like to highlight a couple of things. February is designated as Love the Bus Month, and we, myself and Ms. McDonald and Mr. McNeely were over at Transportation today for their safety meeting, And they, I think they really appreciated it. Mr. McNeely and Ms. McDonald I was there in support, but they were there to really help them to learn about some of the referral processes and how they need them to be a lot more detailed so that they can help them with some of those discipline issues on the bus without having to kind of guess. And so really explaining to them why it was so important to be detailed so they could really touch on some of those things that they feel aren't being handled maybe. So that was really important today to show the bus drivers and the transportation department that we are concerned and we really need to hear from them more in order to be able to help them and to explain the coding processes and how it's really important to have them be specific on the offenses, even if they don't always know which students to maybe say, you know, if they could name that there's several and different details around that. So I think they really enjoyed that meeting today and learning a little bit more that the district is concerned and wants to support them any way we can because that's really important in their safety process. So that's all I have for you, but if you have any questions about anything in the report, I'll be happy to answer them if I'm able.
I had a question, Ellen.
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
because it's new to me, installing new time clocks in all locations. I know that's probably just something y'all had to do, but was there a reason that we needed new time clocks?
That would be someone else's area.
So we're moving away from Chronos to time in attendance through Frontline, and that's just to streamline the service because we do absence management, and our contracts are done through Frontline. It's just to bring everything into one central station location. So we're moving away from Chronos and moving to time and attendance through Frontline.
What are the advantages or disadvantages? Is it less time for staff with the new one? I know the old system took time, you know, for an assistant principal or somebody to go back and manage it, but.
No, ma'am, it works very, very similar. Very similar. It's
Still
just
takes time for staff to have to pull the data and look at it and.
to approve time, yes, so employees would still approve their time, and then the managers will also go in and approve time. Yes, ma'am. Same process, different system.
Ms. Fitch, I have a couple of questions about buses. If you can't answer them, that's completely fine.
Right.
The first one is, this is just for clarification, can you tell me what age ranges are on our buses now? Like, do we run our buses in such a way that our elementary school kids are kept separate from middle and high?
Yes, they're
Okay.
staggered because of the bell schedule.
Okay. Do we have any concern with this, is expansion plan, is that the right word?
Facilities plan?
The facilities plan. Do
I've
we have
just-
any concerns with that as having sixth graders on buses with pre-K students and things like that?
There will still be staggered times, like we do now, for the elementary schools. So they might have sixth grades on there, all with pre-K to sixth grade. But that's something that we will have to address as we start planning on, maybe on routing and trying to make, you know, maybe a time adjustment.
So with our rural schools that are going to house pre-K through six, they're going to be staggered times?
Well, those are already pre-K through fifth, and there's not a lot of difference between fifth and sixth. So it's not going to change a whole lot, and it's also the students that have already been in school with those students. So the fifth graders that are already on those buses with those students will be the same students on the bus with them that's now. And then at Forest Hills and Northside, it'll be pre-K through second. So that won't change much. It'll just go from pre-K and kindergarten, it'll be pre-K to second. And then Forest Hills would be third through sixth. So there's not a lot of difference there. And it's the same students they would have been in school with in the fifth grade.
And I'm sure this is probably a Mr. Bradley question more than a you question. I don't know. Does our transportation office have any concerns moving forward with this facilities plan as far as, is this going to create more routes? Is this going to exacerbate our bus driver shortage? Any of those kind of things?
I've discussed it with Mr. Bradley. He does not think that it's going to be a problem. He actually thinks it'll help because the middle school will have less going to the middle school. So it'll actually help with the routing because we have, the bulk of the routing will be elementary.
Okay.
And then the second tier will be middle and high, just 7th, 8th, and then high school instead of 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Gotcha. Last thing for me, and I won't say anything else, I promise. And you get it since it appears that Mr. Blakeney has left.
Yes.
I got yelled at about teachers not getting paid, right? I just told Ms. Williams that. I also got yelled at about the installation of spoon holders in the kitchen area,
At pre-K.
which I don't
at
even know
first.
anything about. I don't know why you yell at me about things that I didn't even know about. But here's the thing. Little kids are running into them, and the little kids, the littles with their trays and their milk and stuff, do not have a free hand to reach up and grab the spoon, and it has just created all kind of chaos and confusion. So please, if you would, relay that to Mr. Blakeney for me and
He
see if there's
installed them.
anything.
I actually, they're actually my dispensers.
So
And
it
it's-
is you that gets the blame.
It is me. You can blame it
Okay.
on me. And the reason for that is because it's safer. It's one dispenser, it dispenses one at a time.
Is
So
there
that
any
student safety.
concern, Ms. Fitz, just as far as usability with the littles trying to hold their
Yes.
tray and not being able to gather those?
Yes, and that's why we put them on the line first, so they actually can receive it first. The only ones that are having an issue are the ones that are forgetting to get it and having to go back.
Okay.
And at pre-K, right now, I've actually allowed them to go back to the pre-package at the pre-K and kindergarten level.
Sure.
So the pre-packaged forks. We just had a lot of complaints that they were really flimsy.
Sure.
And supply chain is a really big problem right now, and all those dispensers were not, they didn't cost us anything. But they're safer for students. They can grab one at a time instead of digging in there and hands touching everything.
I appreciate you telling me that that falls under you. I'm sending all complaints to you.
Go ahead, go ahead. I usually can handle complaints really well. I have no problem.
Well, I'm so glad that you have a control. You won't get yelled at anymore. Is there any more questions?
Ellen, I just wanted to say hats off to Kenny's crew. We're working out at Hendersonville, right by the Highway 17, and I know it's not finished yet, but they've done a great job removing some heavy overgrowth.
Yes, they have. Thank you. I'll let them know.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Kruger Nation for the hard work that you all are doing. I would like to see parents get more involved when there is an issue, that they would come and support us when the children is doing wrong instead of yelling at us. That would be helpful. But it's a work in progress. We all have to work together. I would like to say thank you all for giving up your Valentines. We're going to let you go so you can take care of your business. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I don't think we can do that.
Oh, please. Anybody.
We can't do a motion. Can't vote.
Well,
Oh, we can?
yes.
Yeah, motion to adjourn. Yeah.
Oh, hey, I make a motion, we
You have to have
adjourn.
that to cancel the meeting.
And I don't
In
want
the
to
meeting.
stay, I don't want to stay longer than I have to.
No,
so
I
please
make a
don't
mo-
interrupt.
I didn't
Do
think we
get
could
a
take
second?
action. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Do I get a second? Good night, everyone.
Yeah, I know.